brother and sister, when you've been in the orbit of a narcissist. You know what it feels like to give and give until you're running on empty, only to have your generosity met with entitlement, your loyalty repaid with manipulation, and your love taken as a given rather than a gift. You poured into them from a well that seemed bottomless, not because they earned it, but because love is what you carry inside you. You gave them laughter when they brought storms. You offered grace when they gave criticism. And you extended second chances when they didn't deserve a first. They thought it was their charm, their looks, their wit that kept you there. But what they never realized was that it was your heart, your spirit, your steadfastness that made them feel safe. Narcissists live in a world of illusions, illusions about themselves, about others, and about what love is. They believe they can always do better, find better, upgrade to someone who will give them the same attention without requiring accountability. They mistake your patience for weakness, your forgiveness for dependence. They live as if your love is something that will be easily replaced, as if they can just step into the next relationship and get the same depth, the same warmth, the same unconditional acceptance. And because of that illusion, they keep taking, they keep wounding, they keep draining. The illusion of replaceable love is one of the most dangerous lies a narcissist lives by. It's the quiet, unshakable belief that no matter who walks out of their life, there will always be someone better around the corner. They convince themselves that love is just a marketplace, that they can trade one person's devotion for another's without losing quality, without losing depth. This illusion is built on entitlement, the deep-seated idea that they are inherently deserving of endless admiration, no matter how they behave. When you were with them, they didn't see your love as rare. They saw it as inevitable. They assumed that the way you cared for them was something anyone else would be willing to give. They mistook your sacrifices for common gestures, your patience for ordinary tolerance, your unconditional care for a baseline in all relationships. That's why they didn't hold it carefully, why they didn't value it with the gravity it deserved. They lived with the confidence of someone who believed you could be swapped out, like a part in a machine. And in their world, this made sense, because narcissists thrive on novelty. The rush of fresh attention feeds their ego in ways familiarity never can. So they always have an eye on the horizon, searching for the next admirer, the next person to supply their need for affirmation. They think it's just a matter of stepping into a new situation, flashing their charm and watching love bloom just as easily as it did with you. But what they forget, or maybe never realize, is that your love wasn't instant. It was built over time, through small acts of trust, through grace after disappointment, through showing up when they pushed you away. It was tested, refined, and strengthened in moments they didn't even notice. They never saw the quiet ways you bent to hold them up, the unspoken decisions you made to keep the peace, the energy you poured into making them feel secure even when they gave you nothing in return. In their illusion, all of that can be replicated effortlessly. Anyone can do it, they think. But when you're gone, they start the search and find that others don't bend the way you did. Others don't give without limit. Others expect something in return. They realize that the patience you showed was not standard issue. It was a rare gift that came from who you are, not from what they demanded. This illusion of replaceable love is what makes the loss hit so hard later. At first, they might celebrate the freedom, convinced they'll find someone even more devoted, even more giving. But the truth is, most people won't tolerate the same cycles, the same selfishness, the same disregard. Most people will walk away quickly, leaving them with nothing but the fading memory of what you once gave freely. This is when the illusion begins to crack, when the narcissist is faced with the unsettling reality that the love they treated as disposable was, in fact, exceptional. They'll try to dismiss it, to tell themselves you weren't that special, that they can find someone better. But deep down, a seed of doubt takes root. The more they search, the more they compare, the more they realize they've lost something unique. That illusion, the one they clung to so tightly, begins to unravel thread by thread, but it unravels slowly enough that they can still pretend it's intact. And in that pretending, they continue their search, not realizing that what they're looking for isn't out there, because it wasn't just about love. It was about the way you loved, and that can't be replaced. The slow unraveling of the narcissist's mask doesn't happen in a dramatic, overnight breakdown. It's subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like a hairline crack in glass that grows with each passing day. On the surface, they keep the same performance alive, the confident posture, the charming words, the self-assured smirk that tells the world they're unbothered. They project strength, control, and a sense of superiority. But beneath that mask, small fractures begin to form. It often starts in quiet, lonely moments when no one is watching, when the applause has stopped, and the admiration they feed on is absent. Without a constant stream of validation, they are left to face themselves, and it's in these unguarded spaces that the weight of loss begins to press in. They remember the way you loved them, the stability you offered, the way you anchored them when their world felt unstable. At first, they try to push the thought away, reminding themselves that they can do better, that you were replaceable, that your love was nothing unique. But even as they repeat the lie, they feel the gap widening between what they once had and what they now have. The mask starts to slip in small interactions: irritability with new partners, impatience when others fail to meet their expectations, frustration when charm alone doesn't secure devotion. The new people in their life don't respond like you did. They don't overlook the red flags. They don't tolerate the same disrespect. And they don't stay after being hurt again and again. The narcissist begins to realize that the endless supply of admiration they assumed would follow them is far more conditional than they imagined. With each disappointment, the cracks in the mask widen, and it becomes harder to maintain the illusion of control. They may try to double down, performing even harder for the outside world, turning up the charisma in public settings to reassure themselves that they still have it. But the private moments tell a different story. Alone, they wrestle with a growing sense of unease, a recognition they can't quite name but can't fully suppress. It shows up in their eyes before it ever shows up in their words. A flicker of doubt, a flash of something vulnerable that quickly gets buried under practiced expressions. The slow unraveling is marked by their increasing difficulty in sustaining relationships. The new partners seem less enchanted over time. Friends notice the repeated patterns and the narcissist's usual tactics. Guilt, flattery, intimidation don't work as smoothly as they once did. That's because the energy it takes to keep the mask in place is draining, and without the steady supply of love you gave, they're operating from a deficit. Their patience runs shorter, their temper flares faster, and their ability to present the best version of themselves erodes little by little. It's not that they suddenly lose all their charm, it's that the mask becomes heavier to wear. They start slipping, showing flashes of the selfishness, insecurity, and neediness that they once kept hidden until they were sure someone was hooked. The unraveling is a process of exposure. The more they search for someone to replicate what you gave them, the more they're forced to face the truth. Their performance can only go so far without genuine reciprocity. They begin to feel the strain of maintaining an image that no longer matches the reality of their life. The applause is softer, the admiration shorter, lived, and the relationships less stable. While they may never admit it outright, the cracks in the mask are a sign that they are no longer as certain, no longer as untouchable, no longer as in control as they want everyone to believe. It's a slow disintegration, one that creeps in quietly but leaves them increasingly exposed, increasingly aware that something is slipping through their fingers that they can't quite grasp again. Emptiness behind new relationships begins to reveal itself in ways the narcissist never anticipated. At first, stepping into something new feels exciting for them. There's the thrill of novelty, the rush of fresh attention, the sense of power in knowing someone new is drawn to their charm. They use the same tactics that worked on you in the beginning: grand gestures, intoxicating words, exaggerated promises of what the future could hold. And for a while it works. The new person is intrigued, impressed, even swept off their feet. The narcissist feeds off this early admiration like a starving person at a feast, believing they've proven to themselves that moving on was the right choice. But as the days and weeks pass, the glow begins to fade. The new partner starts to notice the inconsistencies, the small cracks in the persona, the moments when the narcissist's self-centered nature overshadows their charm. They begin to see that the love they were promised is conditional, that the care they receive depends on their willingness to keep feeding the narcissist's ego. The attention becomes less about mutual connection and more about sustaining the narcissist's image. Slowly, the new relationship stops feeling like a source of joy and starts feeling like a performance. For the narcissist, this shift is unsettling. They crave the high of constant validation, but the reality of any relationship is that it can't sustain that level of emotional adrenaline forever. The admiration becomes more measured, the novelty wears off, and the effort required to keep the illusion alive begins to weigh on them. They find themselves irritated that the new partner doesn't respond with the same unconditional devotion you did, doesn't forgive as easily, doesn't overlook the same patterns of behavior. In their mind, they start comparing. They may not say it out loud, but they feel the absence of what you once gave them. The steady love, the emotional safety, the willingness to weather storms without walking away. The new person, no matter how attractive or engaging, doesn't fill that void. Conversations feel different. The laughter doesn't carry the same warmth. The intimacy doesn't reach the same depth. The narcissist tries to force the same connection they had with you, but it's hollow because it isn't built on genuine reciprocity. It's built on their need to extract admiration without giving true commitment in return. And without the foundation of real love, the relationship feels like a house made of glass shiny on the outside, but fragile and cold within. Over time, they start noticing the small ways the new relationship fails to satisfy them. Maybe the partner sets boundaries they aren't willing to cross. Or maybe they simply don't idolize the narcissist in the way they demand. Each unmet expectation feels like a slight. Each moment of independence from the partner feels like rejection. The emptiness grows because the narcissist is chasing a feeling they can't recreate. A feeling they had when they were with someone who loved them fully, even through their flaws. They may bounce from one relationship to another, convinced that the next person will be the one to restore that feeling, but the pattern repeats. The initial high gives way to dissatisfaction, and the cycle of disappointment continues. The truth they refuse to acknowledge is that the love they lost wasn't just about being admired. It was about being known and cared for beyond their performance. In every new relationship, they are reminded, consciously or unconsciously, that what they are seeking is something they once had and let slip away. The more they try to fill the void with surface-level connections, the more they are confronted with the reality that the emptiness isn't coming from other people's inability to love them. It's coming from the absence of the one person who loved them in a way they can't seem to find again. The addiction to what they destroyed is a quiet truth that sits beneath the surface of a narcissist's actions, even when they deny it to themselves. When they were with you, they fed endlessly off the love you gave, your patience, your affirmation, your forgiveness, your willingness to show up for them again and again, no matter how many times they pushed you away. That steady flow of emotional energy became their lifeline, the thing they counted on without ever admitting it. They may have acted as though they didn't need you, as though your presence was optional, but deep down they were hooked on the way you made them feel safe, valued, and important. This addiction wasn't just about affection. It was about the control they felt in knowing they could wound you and you would still stay. It was about the security of knowing that no matter how chaotic things became, you would find a way to patch them back together. They thrived on this dynamic even if it was toxic, because it kept them at the center of your world. They didn't see it as an addiction while they had it, because it felt normal to them, like air they breathed without thinking. But the moment you removed yourself, the withdrawal began. At first, they might distract themselves with new attention, convincing themselves that they're fine, that they've upgraded, that they never needed you in the first place. Yet underneath the bravado, there's an ache they can't quite silence. The new admiration doesn't land the same way. The new gestures of affection don't fill them up. And the sense of control they had with you feels weaker with others. They start to remember the highs, how your eyes lit up when they finally gave you a crumb of attention, how deeply you forgave when they apologized, how easily they could draw you back in after. Hurting you, that power was intoxicating for them, and without it, there's a hollowness they can't escape. They may try to recreate the same dynamic with someone new, but it rarely works the same way. The new person doesn't have the same history with them, the same depth of investment, the same willingness to endure the cycles. They may push too hard too soon and find the other person walking away rather than holding on tighter. Recapture it's the nature of addiction to long for the original source, the one that gave them the deepest hit of what they craved. They can seek it in a dozen places, but nothing compares, and that fuels both their frustration and their longing. They may lash out in anger, blaming you for leaving, blaming others for not measuring up, but all of it is a cover for the reality they won't face. They are craving what they themselves destroyed. They broke the very thing they now want back, and they know they can't rebuild it because trust and love like that don't regenerate in the same form once they've been crushed. The more time passes, the clearer it becomes to them that they didn't just lose a person. They lost their supply, their anchor, their emotional safety net. And every relationship they enter after you becomes a mirror reflecting that loss back at them, reminding them of the way they once felt in your presence and the way they never feel again. No matter how hard they chase it or how much they pretend otherwise, the silent, unspoken realization of loss doesn't come to the narcissist in loud, dramatic moments, but in quiet flashes that catch them off guard. It's in the middle of a conversation with someone new when they suddenly notice the laughter doesn't sound the same. It's in the way a compliment feels hollow compared to the way your words once sank deep into them. It's in the late night silence when there's no one there to calm their restless thoughts or offer comfort without needing to be asked. They don't announce this realization to the world, and they certainly don't come to you with an admission, because that would require them to confront their own role in what happened. Instead, it lives inside them like a shadow they can't shake, surfacing in moments they least expect. They'll see something, a place you went together, a gift you once gave, a phrase you used to say, and for a second the memory hits them with a weight they can't brush off. They might try to rewrite the story in their mind, telling themselves you weren't as great as they remember, that the love they lost wasn't really that rare. But denial can't erase the sharp contrast between what they have now and what they once had. The people they meet now may be kind, attractive, and attentive, but they don't bring the same depth of connection, the same unwavering presence, the same combination of grace and strength that you did, and that gap becomes something the narcissist notices more and more, even if they never speak it aloud. Over time, the realization becomes heavier because it is coupled with the awareness that there is no path back to what they lost. Even if they reached out, even if they begged, they know that the damage they caused has closed the door. This is part of what makes the realization so silent. It's trapped inside them with no outlet, no confession, no reconciliation. They might drop hints in conversation, small comments that reveal they've been thinking about you, but they quickly cover them with indifference or a sarcastic remark. In public, they may act as if they're thriving without you, but in private, the comparisons never stop. Every new relationship becomes a point of measurement against the one they destroyed, and each one falls short in ways that gnaw at them. The silence of this realization is also born out of pride. To admit they lost something irreplaceable would be to admit they aren't as in control as they want to believe. It would mean acknowledging that their actions cost them something they can't get back, and that kind of vulnerability is a language they don't speak easily. So instead, they carry it quietly, letting it bleed into their moods, their interactions, their restless search for something to fill the space you left behind. It's not a single moment of clarity, but an ongoing awareness that rises and falls like a tide. Some days they can almost ignore it, burying it under distractions, attention, or shallow connections. But other days it sits heavy on their chest, a truth they can't unlearn no matter how much they try. That's the nature of an unspoken realization. It lingers in the background, shaping how they see the world without ever being declared out loud. It's in the way their mind drifts to you when they're alone, in the way they hear your voice in moments of quiet, in the way they can't help but wonder if they'll ever meet someone who sees them the way you did. And in that wondering, the weight of what they lost only grows heavier over time, and while they may never admit it to you, or to anyone, this realization shakes them. It cracks the mask. It forces them to remember the moments they didn't deserve you, the ways they squandered your devotion, the times they saw the pain in your eyes and kept going anyway. They'll bury those memories under anger, under denial, under a smirk that says they're fine. But the seed is planted. It will sit in the dark, growing quietly, waiting for the moments when they are alone, when no one is feeding their ego, when the silence feels heavy.